Welcome once again, everybody, to Irish Sports Daily Power Hour. I'm your host, Mike Frank, here with my good buddy, Jamie Uyeyama, and we're going to talk some Irish football today. Before we get going, I want to mention once again, it's a great time to sign up for Irish Sports Daily. You can go to the front page, click on the premium section, and sign up. There's lots going on right now with Notre Dame recruiting. They're out there trying to get some guys. There'll be a big recruiting weekend in March. And then, of course, spring ball is just around the corner, starting in March as well. And speaking of spring ball, we're going to kind of dive into that a little bit today, kind of start, just previewing spring practice and the battles and things we should expect. Before we wanted to do that, we wanted to mention our sponsor, which is ESQ Clothing, founded by ND alum Ge Wang. You've seen ESQ on all your favorite Notre Dame players and coaches, from All-Americans to All-Pros and Associates to CEOs. You're in great hands with ESQ's custom clothing. Whether you're looking for a perfect suit, a standout sport coat, or a perfect tuxedo for weddings or galas, ESQ Master Tailor blend traditional hand stitching in each garment with England's best fabrics. Check out Ge's work at esqclothing.com and book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention ISD and get 10% off your entire purchase. Once again, that's esqclothing.com. Well, first of all, Jamie, today is the bad day. Yeah, look at that. That looks pretty styling there on the ESQ there. Nice job by Greg putting that photo up. But anyway, today is the bad day, Jamie, and the fact that football is officially over. And we watched the Super Bowl. Congrats to the two players, Julian Love and Riley Mills, both made some big plays in the game, and that was exciting to see. But I hate today. I just hate it when football's over. It sucks, Jamie. It just sucks. It just does.
It does suck. It sucks enough that and I'm one of the sickos that does enjoy like the NFL combine and stuff like that too. But it's like you have to celebrate people testing and running 40s compared to football just because you miss football that much. Yeah. So that's just one of those things. But you know what? Hey, spring football's around the corner. So there, at least there's that. But you wish it could go on all year.
Yeah, you really do. And it's just, I mean, obviously that you there's no way that could possibly happen. And as somebody in the chat pointed out, you're not going to watch the UFL. I'm telling you, I watched that stuff last year. I actually enjoyed it. It was because I just miss football. I actually enjoy those other leagues, and I really started getting into them. It was kind of fun. But I realize it's not college football, and it's certainly not the NFL, but unfortunately, the game last night was pretty boring. It just, it was what it was, and it just defense, I guess, is the name of the game when it comes to the NFL this year. And they did obviously, when you look at what Seattle did, they absolutely dominated, and so I guess defenses still win championships. That's the way it goes. So, the other news that we've heard, I guess, is Notre Dame has officially named Aaron Henry and Brian Jean-Mary as the linebackers coach and I should say that it's actually the other way around, the defensive backs coach and the linebackers coach. Those two guys are underway and locked in, and so they'll be ready for spring practice. It will be interesting because, we have heard that Lauren Landau will probably be a target for an NFL gig with the Raiders, is what we hear. So that'll be interesting to see if they can hold on to their strength and conditioning coach, Jamie. I don't know what that's going to happen or how serious of a candidate he is, but I do believe he's definitely somebody that they're looking at and targeting. So probably not out of the woods with everybody yet, but it's interesting because I was reading a story about Matt Patricia in Ohio State and how they've struggled, because he was in the same boat where a lot of people thought Matt Patricia was going to go to the NFL. He stuck around, and it's just tough being out there for these assistant coaches right now. You're out there recruiting. You don't even know where you're going to still be there or not. But I think it's settled down now, and I don't expect any more actual staff defections, but maybe on the when you look at Lando, that's certainly a possibility, and we got to hope that they can hold on to him. If they can't, then we'll have to figure out where it goes from there. But it certainly wouldn't be an ideal time to lose him, that's for sure. And you're in the middle of winter conditioning. We've seen it happen where they lost somebody at the beginning of fall camp and it turned out okay. So it's not like it's the end of the world if this were to happen. But and let's be honest, Marcus Freeman always has a pretty good list together. So I would guess that he'd probably pull somebody pretty quick if that would be the situation. But still not an ideal situation to happen right now if they were to lose him. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, it wouldn't be good. And Greg and I were talking about it, and we were saying, like, in terms of the timing, it would almost someone leaving mid-season. If you had like a position coach during the middle of the season, that's what it would be like. So, at the same time, his program and the program that's there, that wouldn't change. Whoever, they're not bringing somebody in and someone's like has to implement a new program. I would say that what they would probably do is just kind of finish it out with the staff that they have during that time, and then bring somebody in so they could have someone like after spring, right? Like that would be the most likely scenario. And there have been teams that have made changes at the strength and conditioning position after spring too. So yeah, it wouldn't be an ideal time, but I think it's certainly not not something that they couldn't recover from at this time either.
Yeah, it's also one of those things you just don't know who he'd take with him too, and hopefully that wouldn't
Yeah,
be
that's true.
anybody else. And that's the thing that you worry is, especially if he is going to be in charge of something over there, he's going to want to bring some of his people with him. And so that's the thing that worries me the most is not only might you lose Landau, but hopefully you don't lose anybody else. And it certainly would be a golden opportunity for his number two and people under him to stick around and kind of build their resume and maybe move up within Notre Dame. But you just never know what's going to happen and who would likely stay and who wouldn't. So we got to hope that Notre Dame can hold on to him. And again, I don't think it'd be the end of the world, but it would also not be an ideal situation right now. This is a big time for the strength and conditioning coaches. This is where they're kind of building the culture of the team and what 2026 is going to be. You're in there 6 o'clock in the morning and you're working hard, and this is kind of setting the pace for what you should expect in 2026. So I'd hate to see that happen, but that's just part of being successful, and that's just the way things go. A couple other things, they did release some weight stuff, and I'm not sure how much of that was accurate. We did see Logan Thomas down at 207 from 220. That didn't seem to make a lot of sense. I know Matt did some digging into that, and he is 220. It's not the 207 that people thought. Still not ideal though. It's not an ideal weight when you look at the situation, and so we got to hope that they got some guys that they'd be able to add to the mix or whatever. Some guys getting bigger. We know Keon Keeley will be on the other side there with Bryant or Bryce Young. I'm sorry, and then of course we have Boubacar Traore, but it's that other spot there. I know you have guys like Ebenezer Uatade, but he's only 217. He's not a big guy either at this point. And so that's kind of the one position I think that is a little bit scary there, especially if Thomas can't get a much bigger than 220. Thoughts here?
I mean, that is going to be something. I do think that the fact that Thomas is 220, like, I hate that they update the roster, but then they don't put like anywhere close to accurate. Like, they don't actually update it for the guys who are returning for the most part, because most of those guys are the exact same, or like some other version, or they aren't like paying attention to what they're doing when they're updating it. Like, I get it because they're putting in the new guys, but it's so wrong, like a large percentage of the time, that it's just one of these things that it's almost detrimental to at least the fans who are looking at it, right? But
Well, and then people start judging the players, and it may not even be accurate.
totally, like that was the whole thing with like Emil Wagner when he was like 300 pounds, but it was like he was listed at 290, and people still freaking out over it, and it was like, well, it's not the it's not the same. I will say I do think that, you know, it is something when you look at, like, obviously that made Keeley becomes a critically important player, obviously, to them. And now
Sure.
it's about going to be guys like, you know, Dom Hulak,
Dom
right?
Hulak, yeah, yep.
Dom Hulak. Um, I would say like
Dunham.
Dunham. Dunham, I think, is going to play. Like he's going
Mhm.
to play anyways, right? I think it's a little bit different where they're at in terms of there's guys who are linebackers who can line up and rush the passer off the edge. So you don't quite need as many guys there as you might think in terms of just like with the sub package stuff. And obviously sub package is such a big part of, you know, playing just defense today. And that changes things. And certainly I think they could do some things where they, you know, against certain teams, maybe that's when Chris Burgess, who we expect to move inside, does play edge in certain situations. Cole Mullins can play edge in certain situations. So I think they have those kind of options that they can look at too. But I think that you want to be in a better position where it's like if one of those guys went down, where they had such depth there the last couple of years, where obviously it was really, really tested 2 years ago when they went to the college football playoff. And you just don't want to be in a situation where if like Bryce Young or Boubacar Traore goes down for any length of time, that you're in a horrible spot, right? So that is like going to be a really, really important position. And I would say like Rodney Dunham, it is essential that, I mean, I expect him to play anyways, but it's essential for him to be ready to be in the rotation like immediately.
We've seen good things with Dom Hulak, you know, so far, and he's 254 right now is what they list him at. Again, whether that's accurate or not, I don't know, but it's pretty good size. And you know, one thing about Hulak, he's a fighter, man. That guy, you know, he's going to go up there and play tough against the run. You know, whether he'll be effective or not, I don't know, but you're not going to have to worry about his, you know, want to or an effort and that type of thing. And we've already seen Cole Mullins. It'll be interesting to see if they keep him at defensive end. Now, a lot of times, a lot of people would think that he'd play more of the Bryce Young kind of role versus the pass rush, you know, specialist role there. But there are a lot of options that they can go to. A couple of things that stood out to me, and again, are these accurate? I don't know. But when I see Davian Dixon at 316, I like that. I like that. That's a good number. That's where he needs to be more than what he was. That's exciting. But then you see Sean Sevillano, 6'2", 342, still not what you're hoping for. Again, are these accurate? But,
Yeah.
you know, we've heard good things about Dixon. We've seen Sevillano and his quickness already. But, and let's be honest, we're months and months and months away before any of these guys are going to play. So it's, you know, I like seeing that Dixon is 316 if that is true. You know, it's going to be, for a lot of these guys, Jamie, this is going to be make or break. You know, as we found out, a lot of guys. It's interesting. I was talking to a player parent this week, and it's crazy when you think about the way this has all kind of gone. And you know, as we talked about before, when you're a freshman, they give you a bunch of money to come, and then when you're a sophomore or junior, you know, if you're not living up to those numbers, you're not getting paid that. You know, so some guys who are making 500 grand are now making 20,000, and you know, these are the changes in the ebb and flow of what's in college football. But you don't get much time anymore, Jamie, to prove that you belong. You know, you really have to show up your freshman year and show that, hey, I belong here, or you're going to be out the door. And there are some guys who will stick around for longer and that type of thing, that'll play reserve roles, but they'll be important roles, you know, special teams, things like that. But you really have to make a move. So for guys like Sevillano And Davian Dixon, this is kind of a make or break spring and fall for them, because a lot of young talented guys coming in behind them, and now's the time to kind of earn your spot. And it's the same thing when you look at linebacker, safety, all these other positions. These guys are going to be fighting for their lives as far as sticking at Notre Dame. And I hate to say that. It's just, I hate seeing that. I really do. But that's just the reality of college football today. And a lot of guys just don't get an opportunity to kind of develop. And sometimes it doesn't even make much sense to recruit a guy, Jamie, that's way undersized, because chances are that guy's not going to be able to show what he can do for 2-3 years anyway. So I almost think you'll see Notre Dame go more towards trying to get bodies that are pretty close to being ready to play right away, because otherwise you're just paying somebody a bunch of money that may never, ever materialize. What are your thoughts here on this?
Well, I think that's a good point, but I also think that you got to look at the context of every single specific situation, because Joe Alt is the perfect example, because that was someone that, if you looked at it when they offered him, he was probably he was listed at 240. He's probably around 260 or something at that time. And you look at that and you say, well, he's 260 pounds. He hasn't even played offensive tackle, but you already know, he's growing still. And you know how big his dad was, and and you see his frame, and you think about, you have to know, what kind of strength and conditioning has this guy done? How much weight room work has this guy done? He's also played basketball. So there's someone like Gordy Selsted's perfect example, a guy who was playing multiple sports, didn't really have the time to put on the weight because he was running around playing basketball a lot of that time. Joe Otting was someone who was came in very undersized. He's 310 pounds now, right? There's all of that I think you have to kind of look at in context. Myron Tagovailoa was another guy who was 260. All of a sudden he's 290 by the time he got to Notre Dame, right? There's a lot of that you have to look at, and you have to know certain body types. And I think but Logan Thomas is an example, though. It's you can't take till year 3 to get to that point. You have to be above, and that puts him in danger of a bunch of guys jumping him because of that, right? That's just one of the realities of it. So I think it is something that you have to take a look at, but you have to look at from each individual circumstance and understand that. And you also have to know which guys are going to take this seriously, and which guys are going to really put in the effort to do everything they can and have that work ethic to get to that point where they need strength and conditioning wise. It's not that Kingston Villiamoasa, he came in as a pretty physically mature guy, but also they knew that he had this work ethic that was beyond his years in a lot of ways. So that kind of thing, even though he was already a top 50 player or whatever, that's probably why he's a 5-star kid, because he already has that, and he's already played at an elite level because he has that mentality right away. And so even if he leaves after 3 years, they maximized those 3 years with him. So it is definitely a huge part of the evaluation process, and they just have to know which guys are going to work, which guys it's not just about what you can be, but how quickly you can get there, and frankly, your work ethic, and all the other pieces that go into it. And that's why Mike Martin, all that personnel staff, it's important. That background stuff is very, very important in the evaluation.
Agree. Couple other things that stood out to me. I just kind of want to highlight some of the freshmen, because those are the things that we just didn't know. Aiden Pouncey, 6'3", 172. Man, what a great frame. They got him listed at corner, which I like that idea. Kari Adams, 6'1", 178. Again, good situation. The interesting one is Chaz Smith came in at 163, 6'1". That's pretty light. I was kind of surprised by that number. And then I'm just looking here, as we mentioned, Ebenezer Ouatade, 6'4", 217. About what I expected. Rodney Dunham, 6'4", 230. I expected. Tiki Hola, 6'3", 280. kind of what I expected with him. Elijah Golden, 6'4", 275. That's a good number. I like what I see there. Jacoby Clapper, 6'1", 209, and Thomas Davis, 6'2", 215. I thought both those. I actually thought Clapper might be bigger than Davis, but surprised that wasn't the case. Sullivan Garvin, 6'5", 308. Pretty good number to come in, especially if you're going to be a freshman. Probably not too overweight, that type of thing. Looked at Grayson McKeo, 6'7", 294. Tyler Merrill, 6'6", 329. And that's, we were always kind of a little bit, a guy needs to lose a little bit of weight. They'll need to reshape his body a little bit, but we knew that. This was important. Charlie Tom, 6'7", 274. I like that he's 274. He'll have the frame to fill out, and I'd expect him to be 300 very, very soon. One that was kind of interesting is that he'll be a sophomore. His own Strebig, seeing him at 294 tells me that this is a guy who realizes he needed to get in better shape, and so that was exciting. And then the backs I thought were pretty much what we would expect. Jonas Walton, 5'9", 200. Javian Osborne, 5'9", 197. That's pretty much what I expected. Joey O'Brien, 6'5", 188. That's certainly a good situation. Preston Freisel, 6'4", 208. That's about what I expected as well. Bubba Frazier, 5'10", 175. Devin Fitzgerald, 6'2", 197. Like to see that he was 6'2". Braden Robinson, we always knew he was going to be small. 5'7", 156. They got Dylan Faison at 6'1", 180. I'd be surprised if he's 6'2", or 6'2" is what they had him at. I'd be surprised if he's 6'2". Elijah Barres, we already kind of knew what he would be. And then Caden Finley, 6'1", 200. Like that. I think that's a good number. Jaden Sanders came in, as a transfer guy, 6 foot, 199, pretty much what we expected. Francis Baruhu, 6'1", 277. Keon Keeley, 6'5", 270. Again, I like those numbers. I think that's kind of what we would expect and that type of thing. Anything that kind of stood out to you with any of these numbers?
I would say that, yeah, I wasn't surprised by any of the freshmen, like Merrill, especially like you mentioned, like 329. I knew he was going to be like too big right away. Like he's going to have to, really like get into the right kind of shape. But he doesn't have to play anytime soon. So, that's fine. But, I will say I look at, because there were some ones that were updated of guys that were like freshmen last year, and that's what I always look at to see if there are any changes there. And so not just out of the guys you mentioned from the freshman, I think that 230 for Dunham, that's great. Like to come in at 230, because I thought there's a possibility he could come in at like 220. So if he came in at 230, I think that's perfect. Because I think he'll probably get to around like 240-ish, I would guess, by the time the season rolls around. And that would be ideal. But even if he's a little bit undersized there, I think that's fine. And I think too, even like Thomas Davis coming in at 215, I think he obviously is going to be like 225, 230 eventually too. Like I think that's an impressive number to come in. Grayson McKeo, 6'7", 294. Like that is
love that. That's a great
big. That's a big kid right there. And to me too, that is another example of like, if you look at like what he was probably originally listed at when he got offered, it was around like 260, 265-ish or something like that. Right. So, it kind of shows that like, where a guy can go. But, I thought too, Mike, with some of the guys that are like coming back, that were freshmen, like James Flanagan, 250, 6'6", 251. Like if you recall, like last year at this time, he was like, I want to say like low 230s.
Yeah.
Right. Like he was like low 230s, and I knew he was going to put on that weight because this guy's playing 3 sports in high school.
Mhm.
And he obviously has the frame to put that on. But 6'6", 251, that's a really good weight for him. I think that's great, and I think he obviously is going to be able to move around really, really well with that. There, think both Will Black and Matty Augustine. Matty Augustine,
Love their
another guy.
numbers, yeah.
Yeah, another guy who was like, people were like, whoa, is this guy going to get big enough? Another multi-sport guy who was like, you could tell if anyone just saw how big his hands were and how big he is, just like how big his bones were, this guy was going to be able to carry over 300 pounds easy, and he's 6'8", 309 now, right? Will Black 6'7", 316, right? And you can just tell by the way those guys are built, they'll carry that weight easy. Like, that'll be very easy weight, because those guys, they have maybe no one is quite Joe Alt, but they're close, like they're close in that kind of like frame kind of wise too. So those ones like really jumped out. I mean, in fact, too, Cam Herron, 6'2", 291. I think that's a really good way for him too to get to at this point, right? Because he was around like 270-ish, right? So that's a really, really good weight.
Yeah. Somebody again wanted to know Logan Thomas' weight. It was listed at 207, but we've heard it is 220. That's where he's at. So I think it was a misprint. I think, man, you'll probably find a number of these are misprints. It's always that. Turns out to be that way. All right, Jamie, before some questions, I did want to kind of start the preview process, because spring football will be around the corner here at any moment. Usually they have the first week of practice before spring break, and that's usually to get out of the way of the first one, which is just helmets and shirt and shorts, and kind of get back into shape. And the first couple are really, you're not allowed to do much and everything. So I think they kind of get those out of the way before spring practice, or before spring break, and then when they come back, that's usually when they get more heavy into it. So that's the way it's been really probably the last 5-6 years. I think that's the way they've done it. So we'd expect them to do the same thing. And so you'll probably see fairly early in March spring practices coming into it. So let's get into it. The quarterback situation, we know who the starter is, and it's all going to come down to what happens with the backup, and we probably won't know anything about that right now for quite some time. Noah Grubbs won't be on the roster, or I'm not Noah Grubbs. Teddy Gerard won't be on the roster until summer, and he'll have certainly a say in what's going on. But if you're Blake Ebert and you're Noah Grubbs, this is your shot. I mean, you have to establish that you're above the other for sure. You need to get in that pecking order immediately and make sure you're above that guy before Gerard comes in. And it is, Jamie, I'll admit it's scary. I mean, if something were to happen to CJ Carr, they're not going to be in a good situation. They're just not. And that's just part of it. But I have a feeling that that's what's going to happen to a lot of college football. When your starter goes down at quarterback, you're going to be in the world of hurt, because nobody's going to stick around to be number 2 for very long. That's for sure. And, the way it works out is it will be interesting to see if say Noah Grubbs is the number 2 behind CJ Carr. What does that do with Teddy Gerard? Does he stick around, after that? If it's Gerard ahead of Noah Grubbs, does he stick around? So it is a big important time for these guys. And if I'm Noah Grubbs and I'm Blake Ebert, man, I know everything about that playbook from the word go. You got to establish yourself at this point. I think it's way too early to suggest one's going to be better than the other. We've not even seen Noah Grubbs throw one pass at this point. So, but Gino Guidugli, he's got a lot of work cut out for him. This is not going to be an easy spring, an easy summer, and certainly not an easy fall, because he's going to have to get somebody ready to play. A lot of people have asked about Buckner and whether he's coming back or not. I don't know.
He's out of eligibility.
Is he for sure?
Yes.
because a lot of people said he was, and then I've seen some people say he wasn't, and so I don't know the facts on that, but you would think he'd be out of eligibility just based off of the numbers that if you add it up. So I don't know. I don't know, but it's not an ideal situation. Let's just put it that way. Your thoughts here on the quarterback battle?
Yeah, it's not the best situation behind Carr, but I would say that um, that's how it looks today, and we'll see where it is in September because you just don't know, right? Like obviously Gerard's not on campus yet, and we haven't seen Grubbs in the spring, and Blakey Bear, we don't know if there are guys, the Deshaun Kaiser rule of, man, I don't know about this guy, and then all of a sudden, wow, he took some real big steps. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens, right? So what I would also say too is that who is the backup in week 1 might not be the backup in week 8. That changes, right? That can change. Guys get better over the course of the year. So that is something to watch out for. The other thing is, remember that when Riley Leonard was Notre Dame's quarterback and Steve Angeli was the backup, CJ Carr was 4th on the depth chart. And I know part of it was he was hurt that year, but I don't think he would have been above. If they were playing in a game, I don't imagine that they would have put him in over Kenny Minchie at that point in his first year.
Yeah.
But look how that flips where Angeli was the backup. He's actually played. Minchie's there. And then all of a sudden, Minchie and Carr are above Angeli. Angeli's out the door. Carr beats out Minchie. So, which wasn't unexpected based on, what people thought of Carr as a recruit, but it just shows you like that pecking order from one year to the next, it might not matter that much, right? It might not matter that much. So if Teddy Gerard isn't the backup this year, that doesn't mean he wouldn't be the quarterback in 2027 if if Carr leaves, right? Like he could still win that job. So I think there's obviously a lot there. Like it's never going to be a good situation when you have a guy who's going to be one of the top quarterbacks in the country, and then the next guy is like completely like zero experience is going to be the next guy there. And yeah, it would have been a way more ideal situation if they would have just brought in somebody who could have like been more of a stopgap. If you had somebody, it's like, well, you need to win a game, and this guy could be there just to win that game. I think that would have been ideal. Same time, sometimes you just see like a freshman gets put into a situation where they have to play and they just start doing well because they're gaining experience and getting better as the season goes along. And whoever comes in too, you have to realize that they're going to be surrounded by some pretty good talent. So that is going to help a lot too. So it's not the most ideal situation. It certainly would be a lot worse if they didn't have the other talent around it.
Tell you what also hurts is who's going to run the scout team and who's going to give you a good look, and not even that, but who's going to be the Navy guy now? Who's going to be the guy that gives you the Navy look? And I would guess it's probably Ebert, unless they have some walk on that we don't know about, which is entirely possible that they are bringing in to kind of give them that look. But I mean, Teddy Gerard and Noah Grubbs aren't going to give you the Navy look, that's for sure. So it's just, these are some, I guess, stressful situations, but this is just the way it's going to be with college football. And that's just the unfortunate thing. And then let's take a look at the running back situation. We'll dive into that too. Kedron Young should be back, but I don't know if he'll be 100% healthy. Somebody who can really participate a whole lot in spring. I guess we'll see. Aeneas Williams, Nolan James, Jonas Walton, Javian Osborne. It's weird that there's only 5, considering how stacked it was before. But again, this is going to be a really, really, really important time for pecking order. And I would love for Kedron to be healthy, but I'm not sure he's going to be 100% healthy and how much he'll have to add to this. So it'll probably be Nolan and Aeneas Williams, and then we'll see which the freshmen play. But I don't know. With those three backs, I think a freshman would have to be pretty special in order to see some playing time. I would think. So if you start hearing a lot of buzz about a freshman making playing time, that says a lot, because I do think that these are three really talented backs. Now, are they Jeremiah Love? No, they're just not. They don't have to be, though. They don't have to be. Notre Dame's going to be able to throw the ball better. They're going to have better wide receivers. I think the offensive line's going to be better. CJ Carr's certainly going to be better. So they don't have to be Jeremiah Love and JD Price, but I still think that they're pretty good backs. I like all these guys. I think all of them can be what you're looking for, and it will be interesting to see which one wins the kind of the lion's share, or if anybody does, because I'm not sure any of them are going to, out of those three, would be the home run hitting back. Although I do think that they're faster than people give them credit for. So it's going to be Aeneas is certainly a tremendous receiver out of the backfield. He's going to play a lot. I really believe so. And you can tell he's kind of kept his weight down a little bit, which I think was important. You don't want to blow yourself up too big. I don't know. I don't know who's going to win it, but I wouldn't be surprised if all three play quite a bit. Your thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be interesting to see, because Jawan Sider has decided, based on kind of the situation, how many backs play. Like, if he's got two guys who are elite, like Keatron Allen and Nick Singleton, and then obviously Price and Love, those guys are the guys he rode with. But he's played more than that in other years. And then he's had other years where he's just had one guy, right? Where it's just been that. So, I mean, obviously Notre Dame's in a situation where they're not going to just play one guy, because they have more talent that, deserves to play. So I could easily see those three guys. And I would totally agree with the fact that I think for Osborne or Walton to play, they really have to show out and they have great springs, and then just really kind of build on that and do it, because I think the talent in front of them is really good. And while, none of these guys are Love or even really Price, in terms of home run hitting, I would say Aeneas Williams and Nolan James, those are guys who are pretty comparable to a Kyron Williams type of player. They are very similar. Their skill sets match up there. And I think prior to Jeremiah Love, Notre Dame fans would have been ecstatic if you said, okay, well, this guy's going to be Kyron Williams. Yeah, sign me up. Everyone would take that, right? So, and I really think both those guys have that kind of potential. And frankly, too, I think Kedron Young is similar to an Audric Estime, but less stiff. He's
way less stiff,
and
faster.
coming off of the knee injury, we'll see. But he's got more juice than Audric Estime, but that same kind of size, right? So, I think they're loaded in the backfield. It's not the same thing that they had last year, but they don't lack talent. They have guys who can be frontline starters. It's just that not the same kind of home run hitting element. At the same time, everyone used to say Kyron Williams, he doesn't really have that elite speed. And, he never really did. Well, he took it 65 yards to the house against Clemson in the first play. He could do that. He had a 90-something yard run too, right? Audric Estime had a 90-something yard touchdown against NC State. So I think, they got plenty of juice there in the backfield. It just might not be at the, Jeremiah Love and JD Price level.
Switching back to quarterback, let me ask you this question. If you're Gino Guidugli and you're Mike Denbrock, you already know what you have in CJ Carr. But the problem is you got a bunch of young receivers that you want to kind of develop a rapport with and a chemistry with. But I think it also would be advantageous to not get him a ton of reps, because you don't want to get him injured, and two, give these young guys a lot of reps, because you got to figure out where these two fit in the pecking order. before Teddy Gerard comes into the mix. Which guy is, above the other. And obviously in spring practice, you're not going to let your starter get hit or any of the quarterbacks get hit. So you're not necessarily worried about a big catastrophic injury. But Jamie, we've seen plenty of guys go down without being hit at all and tear an ACL or a Achilles tendon or there's just things that can happen. So would you be a little bit cautious with CJ Carr because you already know what you have? Or would you try and, because you have Porter, although we don't know how much Porter's going to play, you have Mylan Graham, you have these freshman receivers, plus you got a lot of young guys that you want to see develop, and Logan Sedalte and Barres and all the other guys, a lot of freshman receivers, you want to see what they can do too. So I don't know, how would you handle that?
I think they still got to give Carr a ton of snaps. Not like maybe be careful in some senses, but I think like at least 50% of the snaps overall. I think you kind of have to, because I think, like you said, the offense has to grow around him. And let's not forget, he's still only had 1 year as a starter. He's still got room to grow. And frankly, too, he's someone who will want to. Like it'll be, I mean, he couldn't even just not warm up regularly because he was like too anxious, right? Like he's going to want to be out there. So I think, yeah, you got to be careful, but at the same time, I think it would be to his benefit and for the offense's benefit for him to practice and take regular starters reps. But they do need to get like a really good evaluation of those other two guys there before Gerard gets there, because frankly, you're going to go into a situation where you need to kind of know, like with specifically say like Noah Grubbs, like, okay, this is where he's at right now. And when Teddy gets on campus, we need him to be this, or we feel good about Grubbs and Teddy. We don't have to like force feed him as much stuff. Like he can ease into it and we'll see he can go at his pace. And then when he catches up, right? Like, and I think that's something that's going to be like really important, because you get into situations where like it's a different position, but Anthony Knapp is a perfect example of, you bring him on campus and then all of a sudden, whoa, he's like way more advanced than we thought he'd be. He's way more ready than we thought he'd be. All of a sudden they have an idea like, oh, we know he is going to be at this certain level. We know he can play. Like he's going to be like in the 2 deep right away. And then obviously they didn't expect him to be a starter at left tackle, but because of injury, they knew, but they had that idea that he could maybe be a candidate for it because of what he did in the spring. So they have to look at that. And just like you said, for the worst case scenario too, they need to know whether or not one of these guys, can that be a guy that if Carr went down, he could be the next guy. So they got to get a really, really long look at both those guys.
I agree. It's going to be really, really important, because you're also going to need to figure out between those two, which guy would get, the 4th team reps, right? I mean, if you expect Teddy to be, one of the 2 or 3 that's going to compete for the backup, you really got to establish that and know, because you can't go in and give them equal reps once fall camp starts. And then you also in summer, those guys get reps that way too, and throwing 7-on-7 and that type of thing. And so I don't know, it'll be interesting. The other thing I think is, you want CJ Carr to be a leader, right? You want him to be the leader of the offense, and that's hard to do if you're not doing a lot, in spring practice. So this is kind of his time, I think, to just step up and say, okay, not only am I the leader of the quarterback room, but I'm the leader of the entire offense. And yeah, they'll have other leaders on offense, but I'm the guy. I am the guy. And I think he's already kind of taken that role. Especially towards the end of last year, you could tell that he was very much in charge. But I think for the new season, you really want to establish that and say, okay, this is the guy that's leading everybody, and you're going to listen to him. And there are no questions about who's in charge out there. So, and it's been a while since Notre Dame. Well, I shouldn't say that. I said that last week. I mean, obviously Riley Leonard was a great leader, but it took him a while to establish that throughout, his time at Notre Dame, where I think CJ comes in now and it's very much established that he is that guy. All right. Not a lot of questions today, which was surprising, but we're gonna get to the ones we do have. How can the new defensive assistants help this defense become elite? What areas can they help the defense improve in? What do you think, Jamie?
Well, I mean, I think I don't see them coming in and they're gonna, make it elite. Like it has been elite, so it's like one of these things. Like I don't know what the definition of elite is, where to be the first in the country. I mean, they've been pretty darn good last few years. So I think they're there. I think they were going to stay there anyways, regardless of who the assistants are. I do think that someone like Charlie Partridge, I think, can make a big impact on the defensive line. And I think Al Washington and Nick Sebastian did a really good job. Obviously, Nick Sebastian is still there too, so that's another good thing for continuity. But I do think, like Charlie Partridge, you just look at the overall production and some of the stuff he does with like pass rush plan at like Pitt and all that, and just his development of guys, specifically in the pass rush area, I think can be really, really beneficial. Really, really beneficial. So someone like Bryce Young, who, by the way, I just saw like, an analytics thing from like sports information sources. They have like pressure rate, and he had the highest pressure rate since Ade Ogundeji in 2020 for a Notre Dame defensive lineman. So for the people who thought that like Bryce Young wasn't rushing the pass route, he just wasn't finishing. He's got to
just wasn't getting the finish. Yeah.
Yeah. But that is something that hopefully, he takes a step with this year, and hopefully, he can like win cleaner, do better, like, work with his hands better and all that kind of stuff, and take that next step with Partridge. So that's something I think can make a big difference. I do think like Aaron Henry, I'm not going to say like, man, this guy's going to be this huge improvement, or Mike Mickens, fantastic. So, but I think he can maintain and do the same kind of things they do. And they were going to be good anyways. Like, you or I could go in and coach the DBs right now and they'd still be great. They have a lot of talent there. But I think what you look at what he did with like elevating some of those guys that, Devin Witherspoon, who was in the yesterday in the Super Bowl, made a huge impact, right? That's something that like, you're looking at. I think they're going to continue to play at an elite level. And I would say Brian Jean-Marie, Max Bull's a very good coach. And I think he did a really great job. I think you look at like Brian Jean-Marie, and I highlighted it in something I wrote last week. The production level for his guys over the course of his 20-year career. There's a reason why he's been coaching at a high level for 20 years. His guys produce like incredible number of like double-digit TFL guys that he's had over the years. So I'm excited to kind of see like if like Drake Bowen, who he's not going to be available in spring, but just, in the fall, is he going to kick that next step? And all of a sudden he's like, just like more of a havoc machine than he already is. Right. Because you see him make plays and stuff, but can he take it up a level like KVA? I mean, he was already kind of making it like pretty close to havoc machine, but I think he can take another step, all that, like Osprey, all these guys. Right. So I do think I'm excited that I do think there is a possibility that all these guys in their own ways, and it's not to say anything bad about the previous step, but just where they're at and what they've done, even like new voices to kind of come in and help elevate a lot of guys.
Yeah, I'd say for me, it'd probably be, you'd see it more on individuals than you would as a whole. There's probably a couple guys that, just a new way of teaching them will help elevate their game. Or, as you mentioned with Partridge, he'd been around a long time. He can probably identify some things that are just like, wow, if you just do this better, your whole thing's just going to go up a huge notch. And so I got to believe that that's probably what we'll see more than anything is just kind of a couple individuals rise that maybe weren't quite where we thought they would be, and all of a sudden they pop out, and you're like, okay, all right, this guy's pretty good then. Yeah, that's what we thought. Speaking of which, do you remember Christian Gonzalez? I remember when Notre Dame was looking at
Yeah.
him. That dude's a player. I really wish they would have landed him. He's so athletic, man. I was really impressed with him, and I liked him at Oregon. And of course, he went to, I think it was Colorado first, didn't he? I think
Colorado,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and then went to Oregon. But I really liked him on film, and boy, he really turned out to be a really talented player. So, all right, let's get to some more questions here. Where are they? Why doesn't Vinny Freeman play football? Well, he does. He played linebacker. He's just like 5'10", though. The problem,
Yeah.
he's not big enough to play at this level. So that's the only reason. He's just not quite as big as Marcus was. All right. Last question. Is it difficult for new coaches to develop trust with their players when the predecessor was beloved? It's hard to get players a lot of reps during spring, so you can't really evaluate them and confirm who is best, or can you really evaluate them and confirm who is best? What do you think, Jamie?
It is hard to be a coach that comes in when the previous guy is beloved like that. I think we saw that with Al Golden and Chris Ash last year, right? And I think that was a hard thing because Chris Ash was never going to be Al Golden. He's not that Al Golden was super warm and fuzzy or anything like that, but
yeah,
compared to Chris Ash, he's a lot more warm and fuzzy. So, and then when things aren't going good at the beginning of the year, it's like, well, it's harder, but over the course of the year, and people saw that what they were doing, yes, they were incorporating some of the stuff that they had done before, but they were adding other wrinkles and it was working. And all of a sudden they were elevating and like, wow, they're playing elite defense. And like, look at all the things that they did in the secondary in terms of like, interceptions and making plays on the ball and just havoc and all of that was still there. It didn't change by them playing, like mixing in different coverages. If anything, it got better in a lot of ways. Right. So, and then that brought more trust with that too. Right. So I think trust is earned. You can't just come in and do that, but you have to show that you care too. Like you really care and you're really like invested, and that is hard to do. It's not easy. It doesn't happen overnight. It has to happen over time. But I think it is something that can and will likely eventually happen. And that, but in terms of the thing with spring ball and like evaluating guys, you do get a lot of chances to evaluate guys, and certainly guys who get hurt during spring. And even if it's just a small thing, like, maybe someone wouldn't miss practice time in the regular season for some kind of injury, but they'll give a starter, like they'll give them a break during the spring because they're like, we don't need to push anything right now. We're going to give this guy a rest. Well, then you get to see what some guy who was with the twos, like maybe Ethan Long, you don't expect him to get reps with the first team in the spring. Well, maybe Adon Schuler's a little bit banged up or something. And then they're like, okay, let's see how he looks. And then you get a chance to see, okay, this is what he looks like with the ones going against the one offense and all of that. Right. So I think there's a ton of time for people to get evaluated during the spring. Look at Tay Johnson last year, who had like a breakout spring, right? Like there's all of that kind of stuff where there's so many guys, and especially look at those guys that are redshirted last year, that now that they're with the team the whole time. And it's like, well, now you get to see them within that. They're not just running around on scout team. They're actually getting to run the schemes that everybody else is running. And you get to see where they've progressed and all of that. And those guys, the new coaches come in, they watch film of the previous guys. They also know from, Marcus Freeman, Chris Ash, Nick Sebastian, other assistants that are around too. Like they get a good idea of what these guys are, but then they get to come in and formulate their own thoughts too and see somebody. And there might be somebody that no one expects, like, no one's talking about Joe Reif right now, right? And not that I expect him to be like this, all of a sudden he's going to start. He could come in and then all of a sudden there's something about him that Charlie Partridge likes, and he just, boom, starts clicking for him. And then all of a sudden he becomes that defensive end, that extra guy there. So it can happen as quickly as that. And that's why too, I think like spring ball, it's not as exciting because there's not games, but it is exciting for the people that really, really care about the team, because you get to see all these people come, maybe not out of nowhere, because maybe it's expected, but you get to see people jump up a level, and that is always exciting to me.
I would say, too, with this, because another guy had said, obviously, we continually, obviously, with continuity issues last season with the new DC and Ash, do you guys think the defensive staff changes could cause similar issues? Kind of along the same line of what we're talking about here. Well, I say this, Al Washington, Max Bola, and Mickens, they're three liked coaches. I mean, those guys were liked by their position players, and that's hard to overcome. It just is. And that doesn't mean you can't overcome it, but there have been times where guys left and you're like, well, good. They were not liked by their players. That's not the case at all. And so it will be a learning curve. But when it comes to the reps, yeah, I mean, look, when you get to the season, your second string guy may get 25% of the reps, maybe, probably closer to 20. So during the season, they're not getting any reps. In the spring, they're getting a lot. And in fall camp, they'll get a bunch too. So this is the time where you're going to find out who can play and who can't. So huge spring for every one of these guys. And it's just, you're not only fighting for your position, but you're also fighting for your roster spot. And I think more so than ever before in college football, spring practice is going to be huge for kids, because if you get to the fall and they don't have a lot of faith in you, yeah, you'll probably ride out the season, but you'll be gone shortly thereafter. So now is the time for these young guys. As you mentioned, a lot of the guys who redshirted last year that haven't really got a lot of time, it's really, really important for them. And as we've seen, some of those guys have already been run off. And some of the second-year players who, were around for a little bit, they got run off too. And so now it's just a matter of fighting for your spot. We'll have to see how it all unfolds. But I don't know. Spring's going to be fun. It is going to be fun. There's not going to be a lot of position battles, but, when you look at we've talked about linebacker already, Jamie. We don't expect Drake Bowen to play much because he's been injured, right? We don't expect KVA to play at all because he's injured, and they don't want to obviously put a lot of miles on Jalen Sneed. They want him to be healthy, so he probably won't play a whole lot either. So, I've heard Madden Fermo's kind of got a lingering thing. It's not nothing serious, but he's still kind of getting healed up from the season. And so how much are these guys playing? So you're looking at guys like Osbury and Teddy Rizak and Kohana Keo and Koho Keo. Those are the guys who are going to get a ton of reps this year when it comes to, and so we're going to find out a lot about those guys, because the opportunity is going to be there. So we'll see what happens. Well, folks, that's going to be it for the show. I appreciate everybody listening, and next week we'll get deeper into it. We'll start talking some wide receivers, tight ends, maybe some O-line. We'll see how far we get into it, but that's what we'll be looking next week. And at some point I do want to get Christian on because we got to talk some recruiting. So we'll try and fit him in the next couple of weeks as well, just to kind of give an update, because they'll have a pretty big event coming up in March. And so here in a couple of weeks, we'll probably get Christian on too to talk some recruiting. So that's what we got coming up on Power Hour. Thanks for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Please subscribe to our channel, our YouTube channel, and sign up for Irish Sports Daily. There's going to be a lot going on with recruiting and with spring practice. Thanks for listening and watching. We'll talk to you next week on Power Hour.